You've probably heard a lot about teacher burnout and shortages, right? It's this massive issue, and it affects everyone, not just the educators, but our kids, our communities, everything. But what if we've been looking at the whole problem from the wrong angle? Today, we're going to dive into the surprising science of what actually helps teachers thrive, and it's all based on some really powerful new research.
So let's just start with the question that's on everyone's mind. All over the world, we're seeing huge numbers of teachers leaving, and we're facing these growing shortages. People blame the crazy workloads, the stress, the feeling of not being appreciated. And yeah, all that's true. But to really solve this, we have to go deeper. We need to flip the script and understand the other side of the coin, not just what's causing burnout, but what actually builds well-being.
And that's exactly where this incredible paper from the Educational Psychology Review comes in. See, they didn't just do one more study. They did what's called a meta-analysis. That means they went out and gathered up all the high-quality research that's ever been done on this topic and combined it into one giant, definitive super study. So just how big was it? Well, for starters, they pulled together 173 different independent studies from all around the globe. This wasn't just some small sample. It was a truly comprehensive look at everything we know about teacher well-being.
And get this, across all of those studies, the total number of teachers involved was almost 90,000. The scale here is just incredible. It gives us a ton of confidence in what they found. So, what did they find? Well, before we get to the juicy results, we need to make sure we're all on the same page about what well-being even is.
Right, so before we can figure out what helps or hurts well-being, we have to actually define it. It's a word that gets thrown around all the time, but in the world of psychology, it has a pretty specific meaning.
The researchers describe it as this complex, multifaceted thing, but you know what? It really boils down to two main parts, two big ideas that philosophers have been talking about for centuries.
So you can think of well-being as having two different flavors. The first is what's called hedonia. This is basically what we all think of as happiness. You know, feeling good, having positive emotions, being satisfied with your life. But then there's the second part, eudaimonia. And this is all about functioning well. It's about having a sense of purpose, feeling like you're growing as a person and hitting your potential. True well-being is really a balance of both. So to really get a handle on what affects this balance of feeling good and functioning well, the researchers used a really powerful and simple model. I want you to just picture a classic balance scale in your mind. This whole idea is called the job demands resources theory. It's basically a framework that helps us sort all the different things in a teacher's world into two big buckets, explaining that constant push and pull that's happening to their well-being. And here's how it works. On one side of that scale, you have the job demands. These are the things that drain your energy, that require real effort. Think of a crushing workload or constant student discipline issues. They take a psychological toll. But on the other side, you have job resources. These are the things that fill your tank back up, that help you grow. We're talking about support from your coworkers, having some autonomy, or even your own personal sense of resilience. A teacher's well-being is basically the result of where this scale tips. Okay, so with that balance scale in mind, that tension between demands and resources, the researchers crunched all the numbers from those 173 studies. They wanted to find out once and for all which specific factors tip the scales the most. So the big question is, what did the data show? Out of all the possible resources a teacher might have, which ones give the absolute biggest boost to their well-being?
The results were pretty surprising, actually. The four biggest positive drivers were hope, that belief that the future will be good. Then, autonomous motivation, that's being driven by your own genuine interest, not because someone is forcing you. Third was psychological capital, which is basically your mindset of resilience and optimism. And finally, job competencies, just that feeling that you're good at what you do. Now, here's the really crucial part. Notice anything about that list? They're all internal, personal resources.
All right, so that's the stuff that lifts teachers up. But what about the other side of the scale? What are the things that weigh it down? What most reliably predicts low well-being in teachers? And on this side, the results were just as clear. The two biggest negative factors were neuroticism. That's a personality trait where you tend to experience a lot of anxiety and negative thoughts, and something called disengagement coping. This is when, to deal with stress, a person just kind of withdraws or avoids the problem. For a teacher, that might look like emotionally checking out of their classroom instead of facing challenges.
So it's pretty obvious that a teacher's internal world, their hope, their mindset, their coping style, it all matters. A lot. But this isn't just about how a teacher feels day to day. No way. Their level of well-being creates these massive ripple effects that spread outwards. And when you look at the data, the contrast is just stark. Low well-being is incredibly strongly connected to burnout. In fact, they're almost two sides of the same coin. And on the flip side, high well-being is just as strongly linked to work engagement. You know that feeling of being energized, dedicated, and totally absorbed in your job?
And this brings us right back to where we started. High well-being turned out to be the single strongest predictor of a teacher's commitment to their job, their desire to stick with it. Which means that low well-being and its twin, burnout, inevitably leads to one place: teachers thinking about quitting.
And that leads to the final, crucial connection. The meta-analysis found this incredibly powerful negative relationship between the teacher's well-being and their intention to leave the profession. It's really simple. As a teacher's well-being goes up, their desire to quit goes way down. This is the real answer to why so many teachers are leaving. Their well-being is suffering.
So, knowing all of this, what do we do now? The data gives us a really clear diagnosis of the problem, right? But the good news is, it also points us directly toward the solution.
The big takeaway comes right back to that balance scale. To keep our amazing teachers in the classroom, we have to fundamentally shift that balance. That doesn't just mean trying to cut down on demands like paperwork. It means we have to actively and systematically boost the personal and workplace resources we now know make the biggest difference. Things like creating autonomy, building confidence, and fostering supportive communities.
Which really leaves us with one final, essential question. This isn't just about helping individual teachers learn to cope better, it's about redesigning the entire system. How can we build schools that are actually engines of well-being, environments that actively generate more psychological resources like hope and purpose and connection than they create demands? That's the challenge, and finding the answer is absolutely critical for the future of education.